This is the complete birth chart course, every lesson from the series, in order, in one video. It starts from zero, with what a chart even is, and ends with you reading your own, your big three, your houses, your aspects, on a real computed chart. Each lesson builds on the one before it, so if a section loses you, step back a chapter and the ground reappears. Already comfortable with the basics? Use the chapters to jump straight to your rung. Every chart you'll see is computed from real astronomical data, the same math working astrologers rely on, so what you learn here transfers to any real chart you'll ever open. When you're ready to pull up your own, the free link in the description opens it. Settle in. Here's the whole path. If you've ever read your horoscope and thought, "That's not me at all," you weren't wrong. You were just reading the wrong thing. A horoscope is a guess made for 1/12 of everyone on Earth. A birth chart is a snapshot of the actual sky at the exact minute you were born, from the exact place you were born. It isn't guessed, it's calculated. And in the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly what's inside yours. This channel teaches you to read your own real chart the way an astrologer would, in plain English, one piece at a time. Today, 3 things: what a birth chart actually is, why it's completely different from a horoscope, and what you need to see the whole thing for yourself. So, what is a birth chart? Strip away the mystery, and it's a map. One frozen frame of the sky, drawn from 3 facts about you: the date you were born, the time you were born, and the place you were born. The map has 3 layers, and if you can hold 3 layers in your head, you can read a chart. Layer 1 is the wheel itself, the 12 signs of the zodiac arranged in a circle. Think of this as the background scenery. It never changes. Aries is always next to Taurus. Taurus is always next to Gemini, all the way around. Layer 2 is the planets. At the moment you were born, every planet in our solar system, plus the sun and the moon, was sitting somewhere along that circle. Your chart pins each one exactly where it was. When someone says, "My sun is in Pisces," all they're saying is, at the minute I was born, the sun happened to be in the Pisces section of the sky. That's it. That's the whole trick. Layer 3 is the houses. This is the layer almost nobody's horoscope ever mentions. The houses slice the wheel into 12 sections, but instead of personality, each one stands for an area of life: money, home, relationships, career, and so on. The houses are set by your birth time and your birthplace, and they're the reason 2 people born the same day can have genuinely different charts. Same planets, different houses, different life map. Now, hold that against a horoscope. Your daily horoscope uses exactly one of those data points, the sun. Not the moon, not the houses, not a single one of the other planets. Just the sun's sign, which you share with roughly 1 out of every 12 people alive. That's hundreds of millions of people getting the same forecast as you, every single day. So when your horoscope says Pisces, today is a day for bold financial moves, it's not lying to you, exactly. It's just working with almost no information. It's like describing your whole personality from the first letter of your name. Your birth chart is the opposite. It uses your exact date, your exact time, down to the minute, and your exact city. Run the same calculation for someone born the same day as you, but 3 hours later, or 1 state over, and the chart changes. The moon may have moved into a different sign. The houses have definitely rotated. No 2 charts are the same, because no 2 people were born at the same instant, in the same place. That's the difference in one sentence. A horoscope describes your 12th of the population. A chart describes you. Let's make this concrete with a real example. Meet Maya, born March 14, 1992, at 6:42 in the morning in Chicago. 3 facts. Here's her actual chart. First, the sun. We find the sun's symbol on the wheel, a circle with a dot in the middle, and it's sitting in Pisces. On March 14th, it always is. This is the one piece of her chart that any horoscope column already knew. Now the moon, the crescent symbol. Notice it's in a completely different sign than her sun. The moon changes signs roughly every 2.5 days, so this placement is already far more specific to Maya than her sun sign ever was. In astrology, the moon is read as the emotional layer, how you feel, not how you present. And third, the rising sign, also called the Ascendant. This one isn't a planet at all. It's the sign that was coming up over the eastern horizon at 6:42 a.m. in Chicago, the exact minute and place she was born. Shift her birth by 2 hours and it's probably a different sign entirely. The rising sign sets where house number 1 begins, which means it arranges her entire house wheel. It's the most personal, most time-sensitive point on the map. One honest note here, if Maya didn't know her birth time, her chart would still work. The sun, the moon, the planets all still land in their signs. What she'd lose is the houses and the rising sign, because those genuinely need the clock and the map. Nothing fake gets filled in. The chart just shows what the data can actually support, and that's exactly how it should be. Here's the part I want you to walk away with. Everything you just saw came from 3 facts: a date, a time, and a place. If you know yours, you already own everything a professional astrologer would need to cast your full chart. Most people carry that around their whole lives and never once see it drawn. You've just never had it laid out and explained, and that's literally what this channel is for. And if this already makes more sense than your horoscope ever did, a quick tap on the like button genuinely helps this reach other people searching for it. Before we go any further in this series, one honest thing, and I'll say it in every video where it matters: a birth chart does not predict your future. It never has. It's a mirror, not a prophecy, a map of tendencies, patterns, and themes you can recognize yourself in and work with. What you do with what you see in it, that part is entirely yours. So, the whole video in 3 lines. A birth chart is a calculated snapshot of the real sky at your exact birth moment. It has 3 layers: signs, planets, and houses. And it's built from your date, time, and place, which is why it's yours alone, and why a one-size-fits-12 horoscope never quite fit. Next video, we go one level deeper, the big 3, your sun, your moon, and your rising sign, and what each one actually does. That's the single most useful thing most people ever learn about their own chart. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Everyone knows their sun sign. Almost nobody checks their moon or rising. And that's usually why a horoscope feels wrong. These 3 placements are your big 3, and together they explain more about you than your sun sign ever could alone. Here's what each one actually does. This channel teaches you to read your own real chart, one piece at a time. And today, we're covering the 3 placements almost every astrologer starts with: your sun, your moon, and your rising sign. What each one actually governs, how they're different from each other, and why reading all 3 together tells you more than any single one ever could. Let's start with the one you already know, your sun sign. It's the sign the sun was sitting in on the day you were born. The placement every horoscope column uses, and for most people, the only one they ever learn. In astrology, the sun is read as your core identity, your basic sense of self, what drives you, the you underneath everything else. It's not your whole personality. It's more like the headline, the part of you that stays recognizably you, no matter what room you walk into. Your moon sign is the placement almost nobody checks, and it's often the actual reason a sun sign horoscope feels off. The moon moves fast. It changes signs roughly every 2.5 days. So unlike your sun, which holds still for about a month at a time, your moon sign is genuinely specific to you and not to a whole month of birthdays. In astrology, the moon is read as your emotional layer, how you actually feel underneath the surface, what makes you feel safe, how you react before you've had time to think about it. If the sun is who you are on the outside, the moon is what's happening on the inside. Two people can share the exact same sun sign and have completely different moons, one steady and even-keeled, one intense and quick to react. And that difference alone can make two identical horoscopes describe two very different people. The third piece is your rising sign, also called your ascendant, and it isn't a planet at all. It's the zodiac sign that was coming up over the eastern horizon at the exact minute and place you were born. Because the sky rotates once a day, your rising sign depends on your birth time down to the minute. Shift it by 2 hours, and it's often a completely different sign. In astrology, the rising sign is read as your first impression, the energy, style, and instinctive approach people notice about you before they actually get to know you. There's more nuance to what it does than just how people see you. It also sets the starting point for your entire house wheel, which is a big enough topic that it gets its own video next. For now, just know this. It's the most time-sensitive placement of the three, and the one every horoscope skips entirely because a horoscope never asks what time you were born. Here's the actual math on why one placement was never going to be enough. There are 12 possible sun signs, 12 possible moon signs, and 12 possible rising signs. Multiply those together, 12 times 12 times 12, and you get 1728 possible big three combinations before a single house or aspect even enters the picture. Your sun sign alone puts you in a room with roughly 1 out of every 12 people alive. Same core identity theme, completely different emotional world, completely different way of coming across to people. Your full big three narrows that down to a genuinely small, specific group. That's the actual gap between my horoscope never quite fits and, okay, that's actually me. It was never that horoscopes are fake, exactly. It's that they were only ever reading a third of your chart. And here's a common question worth answering directly. Which one is the real you? None of them on their own. That's the honest answer. They're not competing for the same job. Your sun describes your core identity, your moon describes your inner emotional world, and your rising describes your outward first impression. Asking which one is really you is a bit like asking whether a photograph subject, lighting, or framing is the real picture. All three are doing different work on the same image. Let's put all three together on a real chart. Meet Maya again, born March 14th, 1992, at 6:42 in the morning in Chicago. Her sun is at 24 degrees Pisces, so her core identity theme is Pisces, imaginative, absorbing, tuned in to feeling before fact. That's the one placement any horoscope column already knew about her. Her moon is at 25 degrees Cancer, and Cancer happens to be the moon's own sign, the one it's considered most naturally at home in, which makes this an especially strong placement for her. Emotionally, a Cancer moon tends to process the world through memory, home, and the people closest to it. A noticeably different flavor than her dreamy Pisces sun, even though the two signs sit right next to each other on the wheel. And her rising sign is 9 degrees Aries, direct, fast-moving, quick to act. So on a first meeting, Maya can come across as decisive and energetic, even though underneath that Aries rising, her actual core identity runs gentle and imaginative, and her emotional world runs quiet and protective. 3 placements, 3 different signs, 1 person, and that's exactly why She's a Pisces was never going to be the whole story on Maya. Here's the part I want you to walk away with. If you know your birth date, time, and place, you already have everything needed to find your own big three. You just haven't seen the moon and rising pieces laid out before, the way we just laid out Maya's. That's genuinely most of the gap between a horoscope that never quite fits and a chart that actually sounds like you. And if this is the first time anyone's actually broken down your moon and rising for you, instead of just your sun, a quick tap on the like button genuinely helps this reach more people who've felt that same disconnect. Quick honesty check, same as always. Knowing your big three doesn't predict what happens to you today, and it isn't a personality test with one right answer either. Think of it less like a fortune and more like three mirrors held up at once. One for who you are, one for how you feel, and one for how you come across. What you actually do with what you see in them is entirely up to you. So, in 3 lines, your sun is your core identity, the placement every horoscope already uses. Your moon is your emotional layer, changing every couple of days, and usually the missing piece. And your rising sign is your first impression, set by your exact birth time and the most personal of the 3. Read together. They explain a lot more than any one of them ever could alone. Next video, we're going deeper on just one of these 3, your rising sign, because it's how people see you is only half the story, and the other half is where it gets genuinely interesting. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. A lot of astrology content will tell you your rising sign is how people see you. That's only half true, and it's the half that causes the most confusion. Here's what your rising sign is actually doing in your chart, and why it's not a personality mask. This channel teaches you to read your own real chart in plain English, one piece at a time. Today, what your rising sign actually is, why the mask description is misleading, and what it's secretly doing to the rest of your chart. Start with the plain definition. Your rising sign, also called your ascendant, is simply the zodiac sign that was coming up over the eastern horizon at the exact minute and place you were born. Not a planet, not a personality trait on its own. A position in the sky tied to a clock and a map. And it is extremely time sensitive. Your sun sign holds for roughly a month. Your moon sign holds for about 2.5 days. Your rising sign can change in under 2 hours. 2 babies born in the same hospital, one at 6 a.m. and one at 8 a.m., can end up with completely different rising signs, even though their sun and moon are identical. So where does the mask idea come from? It's not made up out of nowhere. Astrologers have long connected the rising sign to House 1. The section of the chart tied to self-presentation, first impressions, how you physically move through a room. That part is genuinely true. People often say a Leo rising person reads more dramatic or warm on first meeting, even if their sun and moon say something quieter. But calling it a mask implies it's fake, a costume layered over the real you underneath. That's the half that's wrong, and it's worth correcting directly. Your rising sign isn't a separate performance from the rest of your chart. It's the starting point the rest of your chart gets built around. Here's the mechanism. Your rising sign sets the cusp, the starting edge, of House 1. And once House 1 is fixed, all 11 remaining houses rotate into place after it, in order all the way around the wheel. That rotation decides which house every single planet in your chart actually falls into. Change the rising sign, and you haven't touched a single planet, but you've completely rearranged which life area each one lands in. Let's make that concrete with Maya's chart again, born 6:42 a.m. in Chicago. Her rising sign sits at 9 degrees Aries. That number, 9 degrees, is what fixes House 1's starting edge on her wheel, and every other house cusp follows from it in order. Now imagine Maya had been born 2 hours earlier that same morning, same date, same city. Her sun would still be in Pisces. Her moon would still be in Cancer. The sky doesn't move fast enough in 2 hours to shift either one. but her rising sign would very likely land in a different sign entirely, which means her whole house wheel would rotate to a new starting point, and the houses her sun and moon fall into would probably change too. Same planets, different rising sign, a meaningfully different chart. That's the opposite of a mask. A mask is optional. You can take it off, and nothing else changes. The rising sign is structural. Move it, and the entire chart reorganizes around the new position. So here's what to actually do with your own rising sign once you know it. Don't read it as a fake front you put on for other people. Read it as the lens the rest of your chart gets filtered through. It's the reason two people can share the exact same sun and moon and still come across and even function in noticeably different ways. And one thing worth remembering from earlier in this series, your rising sign only exists if your birth time is known. No birth time, no accurate house one, no accurate rising sign. The rest of the chart still works fine, but this specific piece needs the clock. If this cleared up something your horoscope app never quite explained, a quick tap on the like button genuinely helps this find people searching for the same answer. One honest note, same as every video in this series, your rising sign doesn't lock you into anything, and it isn't handing you a script to perform. It's a lens, not a costume, and definitely not a prophecy. How you actually show up is still entirely yours to decide. So, in short, your rising sign is the zodiac sign on the eastern horizon at your exact birth moment. It sets where house 1 begins, and that single starting point rotates your entire house wheel into place. Not a mask you wear. The frame everything else sits inside. Next time, we go under the hood. Exactly how a chart like this gets calculated in the first place. Real orbital math, not guesswork. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Every planet position in a real birth chart comes from orbital math, the same calculation astronomers use to track planets across the sky. Here's exactly what happens between typing in a birth date and getting a chart back using the same engine, Swiss Ephemeris, that professional astrology software runs on. This channel is about reading a real chart, not a horoscope. Today we go one level deeper than what's already in the chart. We're opening the black box, how a chart gets built, step by step, from raw astronomy to the wheel on your screen. So, what's actually happening when you type in a birth date? Every planet in the solar system moves along a predictable path, governed by gravity. It's the same physics that lets scientists calculate exactly where a spacecraft will be years from now. An ephemeris is just a giant, pre-computed table built from that math, where every planet was, at any date, going back centuries. It isn't a tradition or an opinion. It's math, checked against real telescope observations. The specific table behind an actual chart is called the Swiss Ephemeris, and it's the same data set most professional astrology software runs on. Each sign of the zodiac spans exactly 30 degrees, and the ephemeris hands back a precise number inside that span, down to the minute of a degree for wherever a planet sat. That's where a placement like 24 degrees of Pisces comes from. Not a guess, a coordinate. This isn't just self-consistent math. It's checked against reality constantly. The same kind of calculation predicts real solar and lunar eclipses to the minute, sometimes decades before they happen, and then astronomers watch it happen exactly on schedule. A birth chart uses that identical toolkit, just pointed at a date in the past instead of the future. That path along the sky, the zodiac, isn't some mystical belt. It's simply the band of sky that the sun, the moon, and every planet all appear to travel through from Earth's point of view. That band is sliced into the 12 familiar signs. When the ephemeris says a planet is in Pisces, it's just naming which 12th of that band the planet was crossing at the time. Before computers, astrologers ran this same calculation by hand with printed tables and a lot of careful arithmetic. It was the same math, just slower to work through. Software didn't change what a chart is. It just made the calculation instant instead of an afternoon's work. Step 1 in building a chart, then, is simple. Feed in a date and a time. The ephemeris hands back exactly where the sun, the moon, and every other planet were sitting along the zodiac at that precise minute. Change the time by even an hour, and the moon can shift enough to matter. It moves roughly half a degree across the sky every hour. Every planet moves at its own pace too, which is part of why this needs real math instead of a memorized pattern. The moon crosses the entire zodiac in about a month, so its sign can change within the same day. Saturn takes almost 30 years to make that same trip, which is why two people born years apart can still share a Saturn sign. An ephemeris tracks all of it, planet by planet, without mixing up the pace of one for another. But date and time only get you the planets. They don't get you the houses, and they don't get you the ascendant, the rising sign. For those, the calculation needs a third fact, exactly where on Earth you were standing when you were born. Place matters this much because of how the Earth moves. It spins once roughly every 24 hours, and that spin is what makes the whole sky appear to rotate around you over the course of a day. At the exact minute you were born, one specific point of the zodiac was sitting right on the eastern horizon, about to rise. That point is the ascendant, the literal starting line for house number 1. From that starting point, the calculation slices the rest of the sky into 12 houses using a set of rules called a house system. The one behind this channel's charts is called Placidus. It's one specific, long-established method for dividing the space between the horizon and the point directly overhead into 12 sections. Different house systems exist. Serious software just picks one and stays consistent about it. One more point comes from that same math, the midheaven, the point directly overhead at your exact birth moment. It's figured from your birth time and place the same way the ascendant is, and it's traditionally read as career and public reputation. The ascendant and the midheaven are the 2 points in a chart that come purely from location and clock time, not from a single planet. There's a fourth layer this video doesn't build, the lines connecting planets to each other, called aspects. That's its own video later in this series. For now, here's the pipeline. Date and time place the planets. Time and place together place the ascendant, the midheaven, and the houses around them. Let's run the whole pipeline on one real example, Maya, the chart from the first video in this series. She was born March 14, 1992, at 6:42 in the morning in Chicago. Step 1. Feed in the date and time. The ephemeris returns every planet's position for that exact minute. That's how we already know her sun landed at 24 degrees of Pisces and her moon at 25 degrees of Cancer. Those two numbers came from an orbital calculation, not a printed table of zodiac dates. Step 2. Feed in the place, Chicago, at its exact coordinates. Combined with her birth time, that's what put her ascendant at 9 degrees of Aries, the sign rising over Chicago's eastern horizon, at 6:42 that morning. Step 3. The house system takes that ascendant and divides the rest of the sky around it. That's what puts each of her planets into a specific house, and it puts her midheaven at 4 degrees of Capricorn, her career point. What each house means is a video of its own, later in this series. None of that came from a birth date lookup chart or a printed table of sun signs. Every one of those numbers came from a calculation, run fresh for her exact date, time, and place. Run the same pipeline for someone born even one state over, and every number can shift. That's the same calculation astrologers once did by hand, just faster now. Here's the practical version of all this. This chart needs your exact birth time and location because of how the math works, not because of any rule. Without a birth time, an ephemeris can still hand you your sun and your moon. Those don't depend on where on Earth you were standing. But the ascendant, the midheaven, and the houses can't be calculated without it, because they come from the Earth's rotation under your specific spot on the map. That's also why any two pieces of serious astrology software land on the same numbers for the same birth data. It's math, not house style. If seeing the math behind this made a chart feel less like fortune-telling and more like something real, that's exactly what this channel is for. A quick tap on the like button genuinely helps this reach people asking the same, "Wait, how does this even work?" question. Everything in this video is real. The orbital math behind it is checked and verifiable, the same kind used for anything else in the sky. What that math can't tell you is what a placement means for your life. That's a separate question, built on top of the astronomy, and it's worth keeping separate on purpose. The chart itself is a mirror, not a prophecy, something to recognize yourself in, not a forecast to wait on. So, in 3 lines, a real chart starts with your date and time, run through an ephemeris. That's a precise, checked table of planetary positions, and it places your planets. Your birth time and place add the ascendant, the midheaven, and the houses, because those come from where the Earth's rotation put you. Every part of it is a genuine calculation, not a tradition or a guess. Next up in this series, we start reading what all of this means. That begins with the first 4 houses: your sense of self, your money, how you communicate, and your home. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. A birth chart has 12 houses, and each one is a life area, not a personality trait. Houses 1 through 4 cover you, your resources, how you talk, and where you come from. Here's what each one is asking about your chart. This channel teaches you to read your own real chart in plain English, one piece at a time. Today, the first 4 houses, translated out of jargon, plus 1 worked example so you can see each one in action. Quick refresher, since houses are new territory. A house is one of 12 wedges your chart gets sliced into. Unlike a sign, a house isn't about your personality. It's a life area, like money, home, or how you talk to people. Signs describe how something shows up. Houses describe where it shows up. Houses come from your exact birth time and place, which makes them the most personal layer of the whole chart. Building one needs your exact birth time and city, not just your date. House 1 starts right where your rising sign sits. It's the house of you, your sense of self, how you show up, the first impression you make before you say a word. If House 1 has planets in it, that's not a coincidence. Whatever's sitting there tends to color how the world meets you right out of the gate before people get to know the rest of your chart. House 2 is resources. Money, sure, but also anything you own or build value in, possessions, skills, talents you could sell, even your sense of what you're worth. It's less about whether you'll be rich and more about how you relate to what's yours, how you earn it, hold on to it, and whether you feel secure with what you've got. House 3 is communication, the way you think, talk, and take in information day to day. Siblings, neighbors, short trips, the texts you send, the way your brain processes the world in real time. All of it is House 3 territory. If House 1 is who you are, House 3 is how you get that self across to everyone else. House 4 is home, not just the building, but where you come from. Family, roots, the emotional foundation you were raised on, and what home means to you now as an adult, whether or not it looks like the house you grew up in. It sits at the very bottom of the wheel for a reason. It's your foundation, the base the other 11 houses build on. Here's what that looks like put together. Say your birth chart happens to place a planet, any planet, inside House 4 instead of somewhere else. That single fact changes the story because the same planet plays a different role depending on which of these 4 houses it lands in. Say that planet is Venus. The planet astrology reads as affection and what you value. Sitting in house 4, it would suggest your sense of comfort and worth is tied closely to home and family, not just to relationships out in the world. Move that same Venus into house 2 instead, and the story shifts to valuing security and stability you can hold. Money, possessions, the material kind of comfort. Put it in house 3, and it might show up as valuing good conversation and close easy friendships more than either of those. Same planet, 3 different houses, 3 different chapters of the same life. 2 people can share a placement, say the same Venus sign, and still be living out completely different stories because the house shows where that placement plays out. A sign alone only gives you half the sentence. If you've got your own chart pulled up, check now. Which house is each of your planets sitting in? If houses are finally starting to click for you, a quick tap on the like button genuinely helps this reach other people working through the same thing. None of this predicts what will happen to you. A house shows you where a theme tends to show up in your life, not a guaranteed event, not a fixed outcome, not a script you're locked into. Think of it as a mirror, not a prophecy. You still decide what you do with what you see in it. So, house 1 is you, house 2 is resources, house 3 is communication, house 4 is home. 4 life areas, not 4 personality traits, each one shaped by whichever planets happen to be sitting inside it. Next video, we keep going with houses 5 through 8, romance, daily work, partnership, and the parts of life most people don't talk about out loud. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Houses 5 through 8 cover the parts of a life people rarely explain out loud: creativity and romance, daily work, committed partnership, and deep transformation, the kind you don't usually bring up with someone you just met. Here's what each one actually covers. This channel teaches you to read your own real chart, one piece at a time. Last video covered houses 1 through 4, you, your resources, how you communicate, and where you come from. Today we pick up exactly where that left off with the next 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Like every house, House 5 is a life area, not a personality trait. This one is self-expression. Creativity, romance in its lighter, dating and attraction sense, hobbies, and children in the classic texts all live here. Anything you do because you want to, not because you have to, tends to show up in this house. It's also tied to self-esteem, and not the way people usually mean that word. Not how others see you, but how confident you feel putting yourself out there in the first place. House 6 is maintenance, your routines, your habits, the tasks you handle every day, and your physical upkeep, including things like diet, sleep, and exercise. If House 5 is where you play, House 6 is where you show up and do the repeated work that keeps everything else running, the unglamorous stuff nobody posts about. Together, Houses 5 and 6 are your everyday. 5 is what you do because you want to, 6 is what you do because it needs doing. Day-to-day well-being tracks House 6 more than people expect. House 7 sits directly across the wheel from House 1, and that's not a coincidence. House 1 is you alone. House 7 is you in relation to someone else, marriage, a business partner, any committed one-on-one agreement. Older astrology texts file open rivals and formal contracts here too, which comes down to the same theme. Anyone you're bound to by an agreement, good or adversarial. Then there's House 8, and I want to correct something up front. You'll see it called the House of Death all over the internet, and that's a scary oversimplification. What House 8 covers is shared resources, combined finances, debt, inheritance, taxes, essentially other people's money, as opposed to House 2, which is what you earn on your own. It also covers psychological depth, real intimacy, and the parts of yourself you don't show casually. Death shows up historically because transformation and endings are cousins, not because this house predicts anything literal. Let's put this on a real chart. We're back with Maya, the same chart from video 1, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Cancer, Rising in Aries. In her chart, House 5 begins in Cancer, House 6 begins in Leo, House 7 begins in Libra, and House 8 begins in Scorpio. None of that tells us what will happen to Maya's love life or her finances. A house cusp's sign just colors how that life area tends to get approached. House 5 opening in Cancer, a sign about emotional safety, suggests creativity and romance that lean protective and nurturing rather than showy. House 6 landing in Leo, a sign built for being seen, hints at work and routines Maya would rather not do quietly. House 7 opening in Libra, the sign literally about balance and partnership, sits about as comfortably as that house can. House 8 opening in its own sign, Scorpio, runs about as deep as that house gets because depth is native territory here, not something imposed on her. That's a pattern to notice, not a prediction to bank on. Here's the useful move. Pull up your own chart the same way you did for your big 3 and your rising sign in earlier videos. Find what sign sits on your 5, 6, 7, and 8, and see if it matches how you handle creativity, work, partnership, and change in real life. You'll probably recognize more than you expect, especially in whichever of these 4 houses just felt the most familiar. If House 8 makes more sense now than the Death House ever did, a tap on the like button helps this reach people searching for the same answer. Even a house this heavy-sounding isn't a warning label, and neither is any other house in your chart. A chart is a mirror, not a prophecy. It shows you patterns and tendencies worth recognizing, not events it's forecasting for your future. Transformation is a normal, survivable part of every life, chart or no chart, and House 8 sitting in your wheel doesn't change that. So House 5 is creativity and romance, House 6 is daily work and routine, House 7 is committed partnership, and House 8 is shared resources and transformation. Heavier themes, not doom. Next video, we close out the wheel with the last 4 houses, 9 through 12, including the 2 that shape your reputation and your inner world. Subscribe so it shows up for you. The chart in this video was generated in Mystical Manac. Free link in the description. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. The last 4 houses are the ones most people skip past. They cover your public reputation, what you believe, who you call your people, and the parts of yourself you keep private. Here's what houses 9 through 12 mean. This series teaches you to read your own real chart, piece by piece. You've already got houses 1 through 8, yourself, your resources, how you communicate, home, then romance, work, partnership, and transformation. Today closes the loop with the last 4. House 9 holds your beliefs, religion, philosophy, whatever worldview you've built for yourself, plus higher education and long-distance travel. House 3 covered your everyday communication. House 9 is that same idea at the widest possible zoom. Why you think what you think and where you go looking for more. House 10 is usually called the career house, but reputation is the more accurate word. It's how the world sees your achievements and your standing, not just your job title. This house also gives you the term midheaven, or MC for short. The midheaven is simply the highest point of the chart at your exact birth moment, and it sits at the tip of House 10. House 11 is your community, friendships, groups, teams, the people you choose, instead of the people you're related to. It also holds your hopes for the future, the goals you're working toward alongside other people rather than alone. House 12 is the house of the unconscious, rest, solitude, dreams, and the parts of yourself that stay out of daily view. It's the least concrete of the 12 houses, and it's also the most misread. That misreading is worth correcting directly. You'll hear the 12th house called the bad house, tied to loss and enemies you can't see. That reading is old and fear-based, and modern chart work doesn't treat it that way. A better translation is hidden, not cursed. Your inner world, your subconscious patterns, the parts of yourself you process alone before you're ready to show anyone. Having planets there doesn't predict misfortune. It just means part of that planet's story plays out somewhere private. Let's check this against a real chart, Maya's, the one you've seen throughout this series. Her house 9 is empty. No planet sits there. An empty house doesn't mean an empty life area. It just means that part of her story isn't concentrated in one placement the way the others are. Her house 10 is the opposite. 3 placements sit there together. Uranus, Neptune, and the true node, a slow-moving, calculated point tied to a sense of direction, are all inside it. 3 slow-moving points stacking in one house is rare enough to stand out. It points to a public path likely to look less conventional than most, built on her own terms rather than a straight line. That's a description of a placement, not a prediction of an outcome. Her house 11 holds Saturn and Mars, discipline and drive, sitting in the friendship and community house. Read plainly, that often shows up as someone who builds community through steady effort and follow-through, not luck. And her house 12 holds the Sun and Venus, her core identity and what she values, both tucked into the private, unconscious house. 2 warm, social planets landing in the most inward house is a real contrast, not a warning sign. Here's what to do with this. Pull up your own chart and check what sits in your houses 9 through 12. An empty house is normal. Most charts have at least one. A loaded house is worth sitting with, the same way we just did with Maya's. If the last stretch of the chart just clicked into place, a quick tap on the like button helps this find people searching for the same answers. A formal note on this stretch of the chart in particular. None of these 4 houses predict what will happen to you, not even house 12, despite its reputation. A chart is a mirror, not a prophecy. These houses describe where certain themes tend to concentrate in your life, not a fixed outcome you're locked into. So, house 9 holds your beliefs. House 10 is your public reputation. House 11 is your community and hopes. And house 12 is your private, unconscious layer. Not a curse, just the part of you that stays out of view. That closes out all 12 houses. The chart in this video was generated in Mystical Maniac. Free link in the description. Next time we connect these placements with lines, aspects, and the 4 you'll see in almost every chart. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. If you've ever looked at a birth chart and seen a tangle of lines crisscrossing the middle, that's not decoration. Those are aspects, and they carry just as much weight as any single placement in the chart. Here's what they mean and how to read the 4 you'll see most. This channel teaches you to read your own real chart, one piece at a time. Today, what an aspect actually is, why a chart works as a set of relationships and not just a list of placements, and how to spot the 4 aspects that show up again and again. So what is an aspect? Every placement in your chart sits at an exact degree somewhere on the 360-degree wheel. The sun, the moon, the planets, even the ascendant. An aspect is simply the angle between 2 of those points measured along that circle. Certain angles keep repeating across every chart ever cast because they divide the circle evenly, and each one gets its own name and its own meaning. 4 aspects show up more than any others. A conjunction is 0 degrees apart, 2 points sitting right on top of each other, blending together. A square lands 90 degrees apart, a quarter of the wheel. That reads as friction, something that needs active work. A trine sits 120 degrees apart, a third of the wheel, and it reads as ease. Two placements that cooperate without much effort. An opposition falls 180 degrees apart, straight across the wheel. 2 points pull toward opposite ends of the same theme. One more term, orb. No aspect lands on a perfectly exact angle very often. Astrologers allow a few degrees of wiggle room either side of the exact number, and that margin is called the orb. The tighter the orb, the stronger the aspect is considered to be. There's a mix-up worth clearing up. Hard aspects like squares and oppositions get treated like bad news, and soft aspects like trines get treated like good news. That's an oversimplification. A square is friction, and that's real. But friction is also where growth happens. It's the aspect most likely to point at something you're actively working on. A trine is ease. But ease can just as easily mean a talent you never bothered to develop because it never asked anything of you. Neither is a verdict. They're just two different textures of relationship between two parts of your chart. Let's find all four on a real chart, Maya's, the same one from earlier videos in this series. First, a conjunction. Her Mercury sits at 10 degrees and roughly 52 minutes of Aries, and her Ascendant sits at 9 degrees and 18 minutes of Aries. Subtract one from the other and they land under 2 degrees apart, about as tight a conjunction as you'll ever see. Mercury is the planet of thinking and talking. The Ascendant is the point that colors first impressions. Put them together, and quick, verbal curiosity is baked into how Maya comes across before she says a word. Next, a trine. Her Sun sits at 24 degrees Pisces, her Moon at 25 degrees Cancer. Do the same subtraction around the wheel and the gap lands under 2 degrees off an exact 120-degree trine. Her identity, the Sun, and her emotional layer, the Moon, are working with each other rather than against each other. Now a square. Her Mars sits at 19 degrees Aquarius, her Pluto at 22 degrees Scorpio. Run the subtraction and the angle lands about 3 degrees off an exact 90. Mars is drive and assertion, Pluto is intensity and transformation. A square between them describes real friction, the kind of drive you have to actively channel rather than something that shows up on its own. And last, an opposition. Her Venus sits at 0 degrees Pisces, her Jupiter at 7 degrees Virgo, about 7 degrees off an exact 180. Venus is what you value and enjoy. Jupiter is expansion and excess. An opposition between them describes a genuine pull between two ends of the same theme. Enough is enough versus more is more. Try it on your own chart. Pick any two placements, subtract the smaller degree total from the larger, and see how close the result lands to 0, 90, 120, or 180. That's the entire method. Everything else is interpretation layered on top of arithmetic anyone can check. If untangling that math by hand isn't how you'd rather spend your evening, a quick tap on the like button genuinely helps videos like this one reach more people looking for it. The same reminder as every video in this series, a square in your chart doesn't mean something bad is destined to happen, and a trine doesn't mean life owes you an easy ride. Aspects describe a relationship between two parts of yourself, not a fixed outcome. They're a mirror, not a prophecy. What you do with the friction or the ease in your own chart is still entirely up to you. So, an aspect is the angle between 2 points in your chart, measured in degrees. 4 show up constantly: conjunction, square, trine, and opposition, and each describes a different texture of relationship, not a good or bad grade. And you can check the math on your own chart with nothing more than subtraction. The chart in this video was generated in Mystic Almanac, free link in the description. Next up, we start reading your own actual chart, step by step, beginning with the easiest piece to spot, your own Big 3. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. This is part 1 of the hands-on trio, where you pull up your own real chart and find your own placements, piece by piece. Step 1 is the easiest one to find, and it changes how you read everything that comes after it. Your actual Big 3, not the sign everyone assumes you are. If you've got your own chart open in another tab, keep it there. We're doing this side by side. 3 placements, 1 chart, no guessing. You'll walk away with your actual sun, moon, and rising sign written down, in your own words, not somebody else's. Quick callback before we start hunting. You already know what the sun, moon, and rising each track. You also know why the rising sign needs your exact birth time to be accurate. What's missing is finding your actual 3 on your own wheel. Let's go find yours. Here's the practical reason this is worth doing. A sun-only horoscope can only ever describe 1/3 of your chart, so it keeps missing you in the same predictable way. Say your sun sign is Pisces and your moon is in Aquarius. A generic Pisces horoscope reads you as feelings first and dreamy. Your actual emotional layer runs detached and analytical instead. Neither reading is wrong. It's just incomplete without the other 2. The other 2/3 is sitting right there on your own wheel, waiting to be located. One quick orientation before you start hunting glyphs. Most charts, including the one on screen, show these placements 2 ways. The wheel itself, where the position is visual, and a written list nearby, where the same 3 signs are spelled out in text. If a glyph is hard to pick out at first, the list next to it has the same answer in plain words. Either way works. The wheel is just faster once you know what you're looking at. Start with the easiest one, your sun. Look for a circle with a dot in the center. That's the sun's glyph, and wherever it sits on the wheel is your sun sign. Take Maya's, the same chart from video 1. Her sun lands in Pisces at 24 degrees. Next to the glyph, you'll usually see a small number. That's the degree within the sign, useful later, but not something you need to note down yet. If you already knew your birthday sign, you just confirmed it. Find yours now and say the sign out loud. Next, the moon, a thin crescent symbol. It moves fast, about 1 new sign every 2.5 days. That makes this placement specific to your exact birthday, not just your birth season. Maya's moon sits in Cancer at 25 degrees, a different sign from her Pisces sun. That's normal. Most people's sun and moon land in different signs. Even twins born hours apart can end up with different moons because it can shift signs in the middle of a single day. Find your crescent symbol, note the sign, and notice whether it matches or clashes with your sun. Either answer is useful information, not a verdict. Last one, and it's the hardest to spot because it isn't a planet at all. There's no glyph to hunt for on the wheel. Your rising sign, also labeled the Ascendant or ASC, is wherever the wheel's leftmost horizon line sits. Some charts label it Ask instead of spelling out Ascendant, but it's the same point. Maya's is 9 degrees Aries. You already know from last video why this one needs your exact birth time. If your chart shows a rising sign, that means you entered a birth time. If it's blank or says unknown, your sun and moon above are still fully yours either way. Now put those 3 to work. Search each sign by its full name instead of just your birthday alone. Pisces sun, Cancer moon, Aries rising. Order doesn't matter when you search. Sun moon rising or rising moon sun pulls up the same combination. Notice how much more specific that description feels than one blurry horoscope paragraph ever did. That's the shift this whole series is built on. 3 separate answers standing in for the one that was never quite right. If you just found all 3 and one of them caught you off guard, that's usually the sign this video did its job. A quick tap on the like button helps it reach the next person about to have the same reaction. One thing worth saying plainly, none of this predicts what happens to you today or any day. Your big three is a mirror, not a forecast. Hold it up and think, okay, that tracks. Or think, that's not really me. Either reaction is useful. This whole exercise is about self-recognition, not prediction. Finding these three placements doesn't lock you into anything, and it isn't set in stone just because you wrote it down. So, your sun is the sign you already knew, found by the circle with a dot. Your moon is your emotional layer, found by the crescent, and it moves fast. And your rising is the horizon line that needs your exact birth time. It's about to set up your whole house wheel, which is exactly where this series goes next. The chart in this video was generated in Mystic Almanac. Free link in the description. Next up in this series, Step 2, we sort these same three placements into houses. That turns, I have Venus in Libra, into something about your actual life. Subscribe so it shows up for you. See you in the next one. In Step 1, we found your big three. Now we're finding where every planet in your chart lives, its house. That's what turns I have Venus in Libra into something specific to your life. If you've got your own chart open from Step 1, keep it there. Same process, new layer. If houses 1 through 12 are still fuzzy, the earlier house videos on this channel cover what each one means. Today's just about the workflow, finding where your planets live on your own chart. Picture the same wheel from Step 1, but now sliced into 12 pie-shaped wedges instead of a ring of signs. Each wedge is a house, and each one stands for an area of life. The first house is you. The fourth is home. The seventh is partnership. The 10th is career, and so on around the wheel. Some houses are about you directly, others cover the people around you, and a few point at the world outside. The mechanics for finding any of them work exactly the same way. House 1 always starts at your ascendant, that horizon point from Step 1. From there, the other 11 houses fall into place in order around the wheel, wrapping all the way back to House 12, which sits right before House 1 begins again. Houses always move in that same direction from the ascendant, so once you've placed House 1, the rest of the wheel just follows. A sign tells you how a planet behaves. Venus in Libra loves harmony and partnership. A house tells you where that behavior tends to show up in your life, which room of your life that Venus is standing in. It's easy to assume that once you know a planet's sign, you know the whole story. Two people can both have Venus in Libra and still live it out completely differently. Say one was born in the morning and the other that same night in the same city. The sign match is real, but their houses can land nowhere near each other. That's exactly why this series needed your exact birth time and place before we ever got to houses. A sign can hold for weeks, but a house cusp can shift within minutes. Birth time and place are the layer that turns a generic sign placement into something specifically yours. Let's walk it on Maya's real chart. Her ascendant, House 1, sits at 9 degrees Aries. From there, her houses roll around the wheel in order. House 2 starts in Taurus, House 3 in Gemini, and so on. That takes us all the way back around to House 12, which starts at 24 degrees Aquarius, right before that same 9-degree Aries line again. To find which house a planet is in, you find the two house cusps it falls between. Take her sun at 24 degrees Pisces. House 12 starts at 24 degrees Aquarius, and House 1, her ascendant, starts at 9 degrees Aries. Her sun in Pisces sits right between those 2 points. That puts her sun in House 12. House 12 is the quiet, behind-the-scenes house, not the front stage. Pisces gives her sun its style, sensitive and imaginative, and House 12 gives it its stage, one that's mostly worked out internally before anything shows on the outside. Now her moon at 25 degrees Cancer. House 4 starts at just under 5 degrees Cancer, and House 5 starts at 26 degrees Cancer. Her moon at 25 degrees falls inside House 4, just short of that next line. House 4 happens to be the house of home and family. Maya's moon, the planet of emotion, lands right there. Sign and house agreeing like that isn't required, but when it happens, her emotional core and her sense of home are pointing the same direction. If you're following along on your own chart, the process is identical. Find your ascendant, that's House 1. Walk the signs around from there to see where each house cusp falls. Then check each planet's degree against its two closest cusps to see which wedge it's sitting in. If a planet lands exactly on a cusp, it belongs to the house that cusp starts. If seeing your own houses line up is making the chart click in a new way, a quick tap on the like button genuinely helps this reach other people working through the same steps. A house doesn't guarantee that anything happens there. A chart is a mirror, not a prophecy. It points to where a theme tends to show up in your life, not a promise of events. What you do with it is still entirely yours. So houses slice the wheel into 12 life areas. House 1 starts at your ascendant, and you find a planet's house by seeing which two cusps it falls between. Sign is how a planet behaves, house is where it shows up. The chart in this video was generated in Mystic Almanac. Free link is in the description. Next up in this series, Step 3. We connect the dots, literally, and read the aspect lines running through your own chart. Subscribe so it shows up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. If you've made it through this whole series, you already know your big three. You know which house holds every planet in your chart. This is the last step. It's where the whole chart finally connects. The aspects, the lines between everything you've already found, read together as one picture instead of separate pieces. Same chart, same series. This time, you're looking at how it all fits together. 3 things today. A fast reminder of how to read the aspect grid on your own chart. A callback to the 4 aspects we already found in Maya's chart in the aspects video. And something a grid never shows you if you only check one line at a time, a pattern most single aspect readings miss completely. Quick refresher on the tool. Most real charts, including yours, come with an aspect grid, a small triangle table with every planet listed on both sides. Where a row and a column meet, if those 2 planets form one of the major aspects, that cell gets filled in with a small symbol. Empty cell, no major aspect there. Filled cell, there's a relationship worth reading. You're just scanning a table for filled boxes. One more reminder, nothing has to land on the exact number to count. Astrologers allow a few degrees either side, called the orb, and closer just means the connection reads stronger. A filled square isn't a warning, and a filled trine isn't a gift. Squares are effort, trines are ease, and effort is usually where the interesting parts of a person live. Read the grid for texture, not for a grade. If you watched the aspects video, you already know Maya's 4 tightest lines. Her Mercury sits almost exactly on top of her own ascendant, a conjunction. Her Sun and Moon sit close to 120 degrees apart, a trine. Her Mars and Pluto sit close to 90 degrees, a square. And her Venus and Jupiter sit close to 180, an opposition. On her grid, those are 4 filled cells, 4 separate lines. Nothing new here, just the 4 lines from the aspects video, laid out on the grid where you'd find them. But here's what a grid never shows you if you only check one cell at a time, patterns that span 3 points, not 2. Look again at that Sun-Moon trine. Her moon sits at 25 degrees Cancer. Her Pluto sits at 22 degrees Scorpio. Subtract, and the gap lands within about 3 degrees of 120. That's another trine. So check the third side, Sun to Pluto. 24 degrees Pisces to 22 degrees Scorpio comes in under a degree and a half off 120. All three sides check out. Sun, Moon, and Pluto close a full triangle across the wheel. Astrologers call it a grand trine. Look at what connects them. Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio are all water signs. Her identity, her emotional world, and her capacity for deep change aren't just individually at ease with each other. They're locked into one continuous loop of it. Grand trines aren't common. Most charts don't have one at all. That's exactly why it's worth pausing on when you find it. Three separate parts of a life reinforcing each other instead of pulling against each other. Here's what to go do. Open your own aspect grid and don't stop at the first filled cell you find. Pick one planet and check whether it shows the same aspect to two other planets at once. If it does, you might have a triangle of your own waiting in the grid, a pattern, not just a line. If your own grid doesn't turn up a triangle like this one, that's completely normal. Most charts don't, and a chart without one isn't missing anything. It's just built differently. And if a triangle you never noticed just appeared in your own chart, a quick tap on the like button helps this reach more people about to have the same moment. A grand trine doesn't guarantee an easy life, and a square doesn't guarantee a hard one. These are patterns you can recognize in yourself, not a script you're locked into. It's a mirror, not a prophecy, same as it's been the whole series. So, the whole series, in order. Your big three tell you who. Your houses tell you where. Your aspects, read as a grid instead of one line at a time, tell you how those pieces talk to each other, sometimes two at a time, and sometimes three at once. Nothing hidden. Nothing that needs a professional to translate for you. The chart in this video was generated in Mystical Maniac, free link in the description. Next, we're stepping away from the sky for a bit. Numerology has its own daily number, calculated straight from your actual birth date and today's date. It's called Your Personal Day, and it's a fast one to learn. Subscribe so it shows up when it's live. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. You've walked the whole path now, from a circle full of symbols to a chart you can read on your own. If you want to keep the practice alive, I map the real sky every Sunday and show you where the week lands in your chart. Your own chart is one tap away, free in the description. Subscribe and keep reading.